Kia Speaks. I'm Kia. Thank you so much for joining me again this week as we talk about change. Like, we're changing for the better. We're changing so that we can be better for our families, be better for ourselves, and actually see the fruit of out of our lives that we would want to see. And so this week I thought about, like, we've been talking about living our truths. We've been talking about avoidance. Like, why do we avoid things? Why do we avoid change and challenges? But this week we're going to be talking about forgiveness. Like, forgiveness is a hard thing, to forgive yourself, to forgive others. Like, we struggle with forgiveness, and a lot of times it's a hindrance to us because we won't forgive. And so, in the Tyler Perry movie, I think it was this movie, but he says, like, forgiveness is not for the other person. The forgiveness is for you. So we need to forgive so we can release, like, all the anger, all the bitterness, all the turmoil that we're experiencing, because a lot of times, and this was my deal, it was, we're holding on to things and other people have let it go and they living their best life and they happy and they forgot all about what they said to hurt you. But this is what I realized too, like, hurt is experienced by the individual. And so, yeah, you may be carrying the hurt of what someone said, but they didn't even know they hurt you. One, because you didn't let them know, and two, they said it, they did it in a flash, and they went on about their lives. But we're stuck a lot of times in unforgiveness. And so as we're talking about forgiveness, I want to really give you some insight to, like, how forgiveness works. And so you got to remember, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a strength. Like, to be able to forgive people who've done you wrong, who've hurt you, who've lied on you, who've cheated on you, that's a sign of strength, not weakness. When you hear people say, girl, I could never forgive him, like, why would you harbor hate towards that person? They came into your life for a reason and a season, and it's not necessarily a need for you to hate them, but you do need to forgive so you can be able to move on, so you can be released and set free. The other thing why self-forgiveness is so important is because it's an option. The forgiveness is a decision. It's not a mandate. It's a choice. Like, you can choose to forgive or not to forgive. It's just that easy. But wouldn't you rather choose? Like, you have the power in you to choose forgiveness, to walk your days out in forgiveness, no matter what happens in your life. I remember a time that we were going through some family struggles, and it was my mom and my sister, and they were on the phone talking about me, all this kind of stuff. My sister, not knowing the whole story, she and I eventually had an opportunity to talk. And I told her, like, I have forgiven you already when I knew it happened, because you didn't know. Like, she was party to a conversation where she didn't know or have all the facts. And, and so she was entangled in what was being said, but only heard one side of the truth. Whether it be her truth, my truth, but she only heard one side. And so you can't make a decision off hearing one side of a story because it's antiquated. And so the whole idea is that we learn to forgive even before we get the apology. She apologized to me that day, and I said, you were already forgiven because I knew you didn't know the whole story. And so we have to make decision a choice. Don't make it seem like you're weak because you forgave someone. Don't ever think that you're less than because you made the decision to forgive. That means your ex-husband, your ex-boo, your ex-whatever, you made a choice to forgive. It could be your parents. They could be dead and gone, and you still have not forgiven them for what has transpired in your life. And so you got to make a choice to forgive. And remember that it's more powerful to forgive because that starts your healing process. The other thing is self-forgiveness it shouldn't come at the expense of others' actions, meaning that your forgiveness can't be bought. That's not really forgiveness. That's a bribe. And so if you are accepting gifts, or if you, take things thinking that's going to resolve the situation, that's not really forgiveness. It's a payoff. And guess what'll happen? The same issue will reoccur. The same issue will come up in an argument because you truly haven't forgiven. Because when you're forgiven, you don't bring up the past. You might talk about it only as a process in the healing or steps in the healing process, but you won't hold it against someone. And so we have to choose to forgive, but we also should not have a price tag on our forgiveness. I remember growing up and seeing my mom and dad interact, and they would have these arguments, and we never heard them say, I'm sorry to one another. And maybe we weren't privy to it, but maybe I would see like roses being bought, or some gift, some clothing item, some piece of jewelry, whatever it was, but that's not really forgiveness. Yes, it's a good notion and a good act, but is it truly going through the steps of apologizing and really truly forgiving one another? And so we have to remember that, we shouldn't have a price tag on what our forgiveness costs or our forgiveness costs. That we should really be trying to truly forgive out of the purity and the sanctity of our heart and our mind and our spirit. Again, not for the other person, but for us. Forgiveness is important. It really transcends like your life and where you tend to go and how you deal and relate with people and your relationships. Like, forgiveness is key with your children, with your husband, with your relatives. Like, we have to choose to forgive. So here's some things that I want to encourage you to start doing. So definitely, I am a proponent of journaling. I am a proponent for self-talk, being able to talk ourselves out of situations, into certain things, talk ourselves up. And so being able to give ourselves positive self-talk in times when we need to truly forgive. So prayer always, and meditation is definitely something else I am a proponent of as it comes to changing our behavior and changing our mindset. So as we're talking about forgiveness, some of the things that we truly need to say to ourselves is, one, I forgive my past decisions and choices and actions. Like, that's the grace to say I forgive me. Like, a lot of times we live in a place of pity and depression because we haven't forgiven ourselves for whatever it is that we've done in the past. And we have the power to do it. Like, it's inside of us to forgive ourselves. Like, just as God gives us grace, how much more can we give grace to ourselves? If He's forgiven us, how dare we not forgive ourselves for whatever it is that we've done or said or been in our past or even in our present? The things that nobody knows about us. Like, how couldn't we forgive ourselves as God has already forgiven us? So you got to be able to choose forgiveness. Give yourself that grace. And then the other things is releasing yourself from anger, releasing yourself from bitterness, and releasing yourself from embarrassment and guilt. That's freedom. When you release yourself from all of those things, like, tell yourself, I release myself from the anger that I feel. I release myself from the bitterness and the hurt that I feel towards whatever it is you fill in the blank. Like, begin to release that anger and that guilt so you can be free. Like the scripture in the Bible says that whom the Son sets free is free indeed. God has already set us free. Now we have to set ourselves free. Like, we have to be free in our minds and in our spirit and in our speech and in our walk and in our talk. Like, we have to choose to be free. And the only way we can do that is if we start telling ourselves that I release myself. I am free from anger towards whomever, whatever. We have to begin to affirm ourselves that we forgive and we are forgiven. That we release anger and bitterness because we are not anger and bitterness. And then lastly, I trust myself to learn from this. Like, I think that is so important that we learn from our past mistakes, our hurts, our fears. Like, we learn from them. But then also we learn from it so we can build a better future. That's hope. Like, if we learn from the things that we've done wrong and in the past, how great would we be to build a future that we've so much deserve and that God has promised us? Like, that's exciting to be able to say, I trust me and that I learn from this process and that I won't make the same mistake over and over again anymore. Like, I won't go through those cycles because I am forgiven, I do forgive, and I've learned from it. Like, how empowering is that? So I choose today to forgive. I choose today to release myself from anger and bitterness. And I choose today to trust myself that I have learned the lessons that I needed to learn so I can build a better future. That's grace, that's freedom, that's hope. Let's live it out on a daily basis. And by starting with you. Just in case you can't forgive the person that hurt you, maybe you can forgive yourself in this moment. Start with you by forgiving you. and then you can extend it to others. So this has been Kia Speaks. As always, it is a pleasure and a joy. I feel honored to be able to do this and share my story and to share some tips on how we can be better in this life of change. Like, if we're not evolving, if we're not moving forward, we're stagnant and we're stuck. And I don't like being stagnant or stuck. I want to see growth. I want to see prosperity. I want to see maturity. I want to see my kids' life change. I want to see my family's life change. I want to see all these things change for the betterment of not just me, but for all of us. So have an amazing, fabulous, you can do it type of week and start working on forgiveness. This has been Kia Speaks. Be awesome.